My Nan had been going potty now for some time. She wandered ceaselessly up and down the length of the house, only stopping briefly in front of the television. If we could get her to sit down, her one leg would rise up and down constantly, with an almost imperceptible but increasingly maddening swoosh of her 70s nylon slacks. Not quite needing incontinence pants, we always put a carrier bag on her chair during Morecambe and Wythe, just in case. She'd always been a worrier, but now she was nervy, paranoid and tearful at the slightest thing. As an 11-year-old, I had very little sympathy for her. I just showed how annoyed I was that my Nan was no longer my Nan and that life just wasn't fair. I was foul. My mum came home from the doctor's one day and announced that she had an ovarian cyst. I had no idea what she was talking about, but I had a strange dream that night that she had a vegetarian sister. Little did I know that a sibling denouncing the consumption of meat products is nothing in comparison to what was about to happen. We were booked into a farmhouse B&B in Devon for 2 weeks, and the doctor had asked my mum to take it easy. She interpreted this as driving down the M5 for 3 hours and then visiting many family attractions. My Nan was bonkers, and I was 11, so we were no help, although I could do the gears. So, just like old times, off we went down the motorway, singing, collecting interesting number plates, and playing I Spy. And all the time, my mum was secretly in agony. We made it to the B&B before the cyst burst, and my mum was taken into hospital in Barnstaple that night. One dotty old bat and one stroppy preteen, left to their own devices for 2 weeks. One of the other families in the B&B helped us out by dropping us off at the beach and picking us up at the end of the day. For the hours in between, I tried to keep my Nan from wandering off altogether, attempted to make sense of her verbal ramblings, and slowly, very slowly, started to learn the art of tolerance, although you would barely have noticed. In the evening, when she settled down in the TV lounge, I would climb up into the hayloft with the other kids. We'd scramble up onto the top of the haystack and dare each other to jump off the top and roll around in the hay. In the true sense of the word. I mean, I was 11, for God's sake. We played with the sheep and we chased rabbits, we fed the parakeets. We discussed the merits of Shakin' Stevens and Kim Wilde. We didn't find any. We ate space dust and we ran across the fields. By day, I coordinated my grandmother and myself to Longleat Safari Park, Braunton, Westward Ho and Barnstaple Hospital, all by local bus. Take me to Ilfracombe, my Nan constantly nagged. She'd been there as a girl and could vividly remember the glorious gardens, and she so wanted to revisit them. So I worked out how to get there on the bus, and off we went. Cheerfully enough, we chatted as our little bus trundled past the rambling hedgerows and over blustery cliff tops, and eventually we pulled in to the Victorian resort. It didn't look like the kind of place I wanted to hang out for any length of time, but I was content that I'd done something to make this old, cantankerous and very frightened lady happy. "Where are we, Karen?" she said with confusion as we arrived. "Ilfracombe," I said, trying not to roll my eyes. "Don't you remember? You said you wanted to come here to see the gardens." "Ilfracombe? I remember Ilfracombe. I bloody hated it. I came here as a girl. I bloody hated Ilfracombe." We wandered slowly round the gardens and she criticised everything she saw, and then we got the next bus back to Barnstaple. My mum, on the other hand, got very little sightseeing done. Apart from theatre and intensive care, she saw the ward and the TV lounge, and she was there for the full 2 weeks. She was finally discharged on the promise that somebody else would drive her home. A couple of months later, and things had settled down a bit. I'd had a normal evening at ballet. I was at home in my leotard and crossover top, and my mum was in the kitchen making boil-in-the-bag fish for my Nan. "Here, duck, take it through to your Nan, will you?" she said, handing me the plate. As I handed it to my Nan, she tried to stand up, toppling forward as she went. She lurched into me, spilling cod in parsley sauce all down my ballet tights and over the poof, peas across the lurid brown carpet, and my mum came rushing in. She'd had a stroke. This is the reason why she'd been balmy for all these years. And after a fairly long period of recuperation, she recovered to the condition in which she would spend the next 6 years. paralysed down the right-hand side and therefore in a wheelchair, and only able to say the word yes. Very confusing on the occasions when she meant no. So now a new world opened up to me. Grammar school, period pain, paper round, deodorant, homework, and living with a disabled pensioner. I had a complete sense of humour failure about the stair lift that we had installed. My friends would come round and play on it. They thought it was such fun. It was so hilarious. But to me, it was the thing that made me weird and different. Where everyone around me seemed uber cool, I felt untercool. My mum did all she could to try to make things normal, and I can't really imagine how bad things were for her for those years. But as an 11-year-old, I didn't see any of that. And so my childhood ended there. No more Nazi games, no more climbing trees, no more visits to the railway. My bike was now used for my paper round and no longer for pleasure. But it wasn't all doom and gloom. I would have grown out of those things anyway. I had Duran Duran and snorkel jackets and meeting my mates at Boots Corner to look forward to. A world of drainpipe jeans and back-combed hair and shortening your school skirt with white thread and fluctuating between fat tie and thin tie depending on what week it was. And anyway, nobody ever said being 11 was going to be easy.